Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that. But don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 339. We are reviewing movies, TV projects, just stuff that are opening or maybe might be streaming. We're changing up a little bit of the game plan here on CinemAddicts. But anyways, stuff that's coming out or streaming for the week of starting Friday, April 10th, 2026. Movies that will be reviewed on this episode include The Travel Companion, Serpent's Path, My Undesirable Friends, Sirāt, and Chime. How are you, Eric?
Much better than last week.
Yeah, you were sick last week, so we actually did a review of the Yeti. I scrapped it. Eric's voice was very bad. How long did it take for you to just get better last week?
It's starting to get better now.
Oh my gosh. Did you see a doctor? Did you have to take antibiotics? Did you have pneumonia? Did you almost die? What was going on the last 7 days?
What's this doctor thing?
Doctor, do you have a medical plan? No medical plan. Oh, no. That's why.
I'm not independently.
Oh, you're not independent? Oh, no? There's no Medi-Cal and over in, no Medi-Cal or free medical that you have? No. So just self-healing. You were self-healing.
If there's free medical care, I'm not aware of how to get it.
Okay.
So I do not have it currently.
So you were sick for a week and you didn't take any meds.
Longer than that.
How were you able to heal yourself physically?
Lots and lots of NyQuil and sleep and
geez. And then did you have to curtail your weekly work schedule because of that, or how did that work out?
Just had to press through it.
Press through it. Well, this week the good news,
like with a hoarse voice and like a sore throat. Running karaoke makes it difficult.
Oh, wow.
All right, next up we got like RFK Jr.
Well, the great thing this week is Bruce Purkey up in the attic, even though he's languishing in the attic because we're not even giving him people food. Eric's not giving him people food. The good thing about Bruce this week, even sans people's food, he spent, I think, over 5 hours doing this documentary called My Undesirable Friends. So you will get a really deep dive from Bruce Purkey on this project, My Undesirable Friends. This movie is critically acclaimed. Also, he has a review of the Hulu. It's currently streaming on Hulu, but it's critically acclaimed Sirāt. He saw that last week or a couple of days ago. I think, Eric, you were trying to watch a little bit of it, or you were not? Did you see a little bit?
Got about halfway through, and then I was going to finish it last night, but I took NyQuil and passed out instead. So
yeah, that's good. You need to rest. But the good thing is this week,
I will say it's pretty good so far. So I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it.
All right. Well, let me just start off with a couple of movies that I watched, and I was going to put them over on the Hodgepod, but I think I'm going to do it right now. The bad news is there's one movie that me and Eric are not reviewing this week because we saw the movie about 2 weeks ago, Lionsgate film. It's called Beast. We did a bunch of interviews for this. We saw the movie, screening link. No complaints here, but because we saw screening link, we could not review or recommend the movie for Beast. What can you say without reviewing it, Eric, about this movie called Beast?
Might be great, might suck. Who knows? It could be either one. It said no reviews for like the screening link was only for the interviews that specifically said no reviews, so can't do it.
Well, if you want to see Eric's interview with Daniel McPherson,
check it out. Yeah. Check it out. Take a flyer on it. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not. That's up to you to decide. We can't say anything about it.
We can't say anything about Beast. All we can say is thank you to Lionsgate for giving us a whole bunch of interviews. And
I will say the interview, I really enjoyed the interview, and you might get a hint of what I thought of the movie during the interview. So there's
very good. So listen to Eric Holmes' interview with actor Daniel McPherson. He is a lead in this MMA drama. It's set in Australia called Beast. It's an interesting title. Generic title.
Co-written by Russell Crowe.
Co-written by Russell Crowe, and the other person who was a co-writer was also a writer on Land of Bad. If you listen to Eric Holmes' interview.
Now, Land of Bad we can't talk about. That movie's rad.
That movie is rad. That Land of Bad co-star Daniel McPherson.
They should have called it Land of Rad.
Land of Rad. Yeah, and Daniel McPherson he worked on that film with Russell Crowe back in 2022. And he talks to Eric about how Land of Bad actually helped him, influenced him, and helped him get the lead for this movie, Beast. I will be posting Eric's interviews with, I believe, Tyler Atkins. I think that's how you pronounce the Beast director's name, and Daniel McPherson on Hodgepod, which is going to be a separate CinemAddicts episode this week, I believe, whenever I get the time, if I get the time. If not, if I don't post it on a separate audio feed, you will be able to see Eric's video interview with the director of Beast, as well as Daniel McPherson, the lead actor, on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. So that is what we can say about Beast, and it's in theaters Friday. Hopefully some of you guys will like it. It's an indie film, but has some really interesting stuff in it that we can't talk about. But there are a couple of movies that we can talk about for this episode. Eric did a couple of movies directed from this director Kiyoshi Kurosawa. We will get to that in a second. But you know what? Let me talk about this spaghetti western film called Heads or Tails. It stars John C. Reilly. Here is an official plot summary. Quote, after a deadly rodeo and a stolen kiss, Rosa and her cowboy lover Santino flee across the Italian wilderness, pursued by Buffalo Bill himself on a hunt for the legends he helped create. This is an epic western, all right? And it is directed by Alessio Rigo and Matteo Zoppis. It's set in Italy. Sergio Leone is one of the masters of Italian cinema, best known for his Man with No Name trilogy. Of course, there's another film he did, a western called Once Upon a Time in the West. I love him. Eric, are you familiar with his work? Have you seen Sergio Leone's films at all?
Never heard of him.
Never heard. In my life. So you've seen some of these movies when you were a kid, possibly. Yeah. I don't know if you've done a rewatch on them.
Not necessarily when I was a kid, but yeah, I've seen his movies.
But Sergio Leone is known for his operatic way of shooting a movie. There's some really great performances in his films. I'm thinking Peter Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West. He plays the bad guy at the beginning of the movie. Does he shoot a kid? I think he shoots a kid at the beginning of Once Upon a Time in the West. As a kid, I saw that and I was blown away. Charles Bronson, I think
in real life too.
Kid.
That wasn't even a character; he just did it.
But no. But it's a very interesting movie. Once Upon a Time in the West. Really loved that as a child, and over the years, it's still held its power over me. In fact, I saw Once Upon a Time in the West in LA screening long ago with our buddy Anderson Cowan. We saw a screening of that. The print wasn't very good. But why am I saying Sergio Leone? Because if you watch Heads or Tails, there is a lot of Sergio in this movie. Especially, it's an Italian Western, so you might get a little bit of Sergio in this movie. Again, the directors are Alessio Rigo and Matteo Zoppis. My bad for the mispronunciation. Once Upon a Time in the West, it had some really great actors. All right, I mentioned Peter Fonda, Charles Bronson, Jason Robards. But the star of that movie is this late actress, Claudia Cardinale. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. She was very good in this movie. The reason why I say this is because she was the heart of Once Upon a Time in the West. And in Heads or Tails, I believe it owes a little bit of a nod to Once Upon a Time in the West, because the main character in this film is a woman named Rosa, played by Nadia Tereskevich. I'm mispronouncing the name again. Nadia is fantastic as Rosa, because you see her as this young woman. She's married to this corrupt general, and they're watching Buffalo Bill, played by John C. Reilly. He's doing a Western reenactment over, I believe, in Italy, And he's doing this Western reenactment, and everything's fine. And she's really amazed at Buffalo Bill's tall tales and the reenactment of what happens. And I think it's with Buffalo Bill, and he's shooting some Indians, and there's a whole crowd. And she's pretty much swept up about Buffalo Bill's showmanship. She gets to talk to him a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. And then Buffalo Bill gets challenged by her husband. Again, he's a corrupt military colonel or general. And they have a wager on who's the better cowboy, the cowherds in Italy or the cowboys in America. And they start off with this really big gamble situation. And a lot of people in this event start gambling for, obviously, their home country, and et cetera, et cetera. And then this whole gambling situation on who's the best cowboy or cowherder turns really sour when there's something that happens within the betting that leads to the corrupt military guy to lose a lot of money. He gets really pissed off at the person who's playing the cowherd, this guy named Santino. The Santino is played by Alessandro Borghi, and he's good in this one as well. And he starts beating up on Santino and telling him, or he slaps Santino a couple of times, and you're saying, you were supposed to fall down. You're supposed to make me a lot of money. You did not listen to me. What's going on? And before he can start even manhandling Santino even more, his wife, Rosa, the military man's wife, Rosa, shoots him dead. And now Rosa and that cowboy Santino leave the premises, and the rest of the movie deals with them trying to escape people who are after them because a killing took place. A very important man was murdered. And then also hot on their trail is Buffalo Bill, played by John C. Reilly. Heads or Tails is a very interesting title for this Western. I don't even know would call it a spaghetti Western. This is in theaters and digital April 10th. If you are a Western fan or a fan of, like I said, Sergio Leone, there are moments in this movie that you will absolutely love, because there are some really epically, beautifully shot sequences and action scenes and gorgeous vistas. If you are a Western fans, Heads or Tails is tailor-made for you. I wanted to love this movie so much. I wanted to give it 5 stars. But the problem with this film is John C. Reilly as Buffalo Bill is very good. In my opinion, he was not utilized to the best of his abilities in this film. And there is a final confrontation with Buffalo Bill and let's just say, and Rosa in this movie that I wanted. It just was not. I understand why they pulled it off a certain way and what this movie was going for. And maybe I might even do a spoiler situation with Heads or Tails if I have time this weekend, and I'll put it up on our YouTube channel. This movie has a lot of things to say about the myth of the West and the reality of what actually happened. I get that. But the way that the final confrontation or the final meeting between Buffalo Bill and Rosa left me wanting more. I wanted more from that. There were a couple of plot loopholes regarding Santino and someone else that he meets in jail that I wanted sorted out as well. And that there are a couple of loose threads in this movie that I felt were a little bit, should have been tied up better. And then the final, I would say 30 minutes is very surreal. And it's too bad that you didn't get to see this, Eric, because I think you would have appreciated it on a surreal level. This Western takes a very David Lynchian, I would maybe David Lynchian Cronenbergian twist to Heads or Tails, which I did not see coming. But I think the execution of that final act regarding that surreal part was not as strong as the first 2 acts. All that said, Heads or Tails is worth watching. It's a solid Western, and just, I don't know if, I think most of you, it says theaters, April 10th. It's worth a rental on digital if you are a fan of these type of epic Westerns. And if you want to see a really great performance by that lead, whose last name I'm going to butcher again, Nadia Taraskiewicz. As Rosa, she is fantastic in this movie. I really wanted to go 4 stars with Heads or Tails, but right now, as it lays, I'm giving Heads or Tails a solid recommend. 3.5 out of 5 stars for Heads or Tails in theaters Friday and on digital April 10th. Okay, so that is the first.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Is this a Italian movie?
Italian movie. Yeah, that's
why.
why.
Yeah, it's a spaghetti Western. What you need for a spaghetti Western is an Italian-made Western movie.
Yeah, Italian-made Western movie, and you're gonna have all of those flourishes, and the way it's shot, it's beautifully shot. Yeah. I think maybe even down the road, I might even bump it up to a 4. It's just left a bad taste in my mouth because the third act could have been trimmed a little bit more. All that said, the third act is very original. Okay, so it is still a solid recommend for me. Finally, before we get to Eric's 2 films, I'm going to mention this film called The Travel Companion. And this is a movie that was sent to us earlier in the week, and I was thinking, I don't want to see it. It looks like another indie movie that I'm going to have to slog through. It hits theaters on April 10th, New York City. But then there will be further theatrical rollouts through the rest of April and May. The filmmaking duo are Travis Wood and Alex Mallis. Mallis. I.S. And apologies if I mispronounce the name. Now, let me get to the plot synopsis and let me tell you why I'm pleasantly surprised by the travel companion. Struggling documentarian Simon relies on the unique perk of his roommate. Simon's played by Tristan Turner, actor Tristan Turner. And Simon is reliant on his roommate who works for the airlines. I believe he works for JFK. It's a New York set film. His roommate is Bruce, and they've been best friends since third grade. They live in New York. Bruce has a pretty cool job where he works for the airlines, and by being an employee of the airlines, he is allowed on an annual basis one travel companion per annual year, right? And with that travel companion, Bruce and that travel companion can wait on standby and fly to wherever they want around the world. Now, since Simon is Bruce's best friend, Simon is Bruce's travel companion. Henceforth, the movie title is The Travel Companion. Now, Simon, who is a struggling filmmaker documentarian, he's been filming a lot of B-roll on all of the travels he's gone on by waiting on standby, all the places. I think they went to Japan one time, and I think in this movie he was off to try to go make a flight to Arizona, but he's been to different places. We're assuming he's seen different places. And he's assumedly shot a ton of B-roll from all over the world because Simon is trying to make a movie about the walls and borders that people of different cultures or different persuasions build, or maybe even make it a personal documentary about the walls we might be building for each other or for the outside. Do the walls keep people out, or do the walls keep us in? And the way he says it was sort of interesting. The thing with Simon, though, like a lot of artists, he is very narcissistic and self-centered. And the barrier to entry for The Travel Companion, it's a very uncomfortable comedy because Simon is, though he's not overly aggressive or he's not overly an a-hole or a jerk, he is narcissistic, meaning he's putting his own needs before others, and he sometimes gaslights people. I'm assuming unwittingly, or maybe he sort of knows it, but he's so focused on making a film and he's so frustrated with his life that he puts his needs upon others, which leads to a possible fracture with his friendship with Bruce and their roommates, right? What happens is there is a third person in this equation who complicates the matters. Her name is Beatrice, played by Naomi Asa, ASA. Beatrice ends up being Bruce's new girlfriend. And Beatrice is also a filmmaker, except she is not as struggling as Simon. She is actually doing pretty well. In fact, the opening moment of The Travel Companion has Simon and even Beatrice and a few other filmmakers talking about a scene from their latest short. It's one of these Q&A Q&A screenings. And it's pretty funny because the first 5 minutes, you listen to each of these filmmakers talk about their inspiration for making the film. And when it gets to Simon's turn, he's not able to speak because they all run out of time. So you realize at the beginning of The Travel Companion, Simon is very unlucky and he's not really well heard of because of possibly the way he is. He doesn't really have a clear possible vision for his work. He talks in circles, possibly like me at times. I related to him a little bit because he talks in circles and he annoys people sometimes. I think, again, the barrier to entry is if you cannot stand Simon, he's going to be your lead. But if you're empathetic to his plight and you see as the narrative moves on, he continues to annoy people and he makes a lot of mistakes. Most of it is self-inflicted. If you can watch that for that uncomfortable comedy, if this is your lane, then The Travel Companion is a total gem of a movie. This is my big surprise within the last couple of weeks. I absolutely love this because there's also a value-added element to The Travel Companion, which is it's not just about a narcissist, it's also about a struggling filmmaker. And the filmmakers here, Travis Wood and again, Alex Wallace, Malice, they craft a really unique character and they show what it's like, the pitfalls of being a filmmaker. Sometimes filmmakers can be selfish. They will put their needs over the benefit and welfare of others, and they may be even self-sabotaging. So if you are a creative and want to make a movie, or are thinking of crafting your own story, or if you're even in the artistic space, The Travel Companion is a value-added movie because it might be a movie you don't want to look at because you might be seeing a little bit of yourself in Simon as well. I really enjoyed this movie. And towards the end of the film, it was surprisingly resonant without being too ham-handed or heavy-handed. It was also a surprisingly moving film towards the end and subtle film, a total surprise. It's about the art of filmmaking and the art of possibly trying to get out of your own way and headspace. Really well done indie film. And I think it's one of these movies where you might look at it and go, The Travel Companion, it looks sort of like homework for me. It looks like maybe a forget about it type of indie. No, this is a memorable indie that I will definitely remember this movie moving forward years after this review. So The Travel Companion, again, it's in New York, I think in BAM Cinemas, I believe that's what it's called, starting April 10th. But there will be further theatrical rollouts through the rest of this month, which is April, and also through most of May. My rating for The Travel Companion is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Love this movie. All right, so we are going to wrap up this episode. Eric, you have a couple of movies from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. These movies are Serpent's Path and Chime. Serpent's Path is, I'll say, this is a 1998 movie by Kurosawa, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, best known for, I believe, Cure. Eric, you've seen that? And then he also did Cloud. I know Bruce Purkey.
Cure, Pulse.
Right. So you're a fan of Kurosawa. Bruce is a huge fan of Kurosawa as well. I'm assuming you are because you've seen both of these movies. So Serpent's Path was made in 1998. Kurosawa remade his own film in 2024. Yeah. I'm only halfway done with Serpent's Path because I just had to take my mom to the eye doctor. Couldn't finish the entire film, and I'm going to get to it. So far, I'm really loving Serpent's Path. Here's the special thing about the Serpent's Path. It opens Friday, April 10th in LA, I believe in the Alamo Drafthouse in downtown Los Angeles, and also the Laemmle Noho. Noho's the Laemmle North Hollywood. But please pay attention. It might be playing in your neck of the woods. I will have a link of where it will be showing in the coming weeks because Serpent's Path, this version, 1998 version, it's a 4K restoration. And then Chime, which is a 45-minute short from Kiyoshi Kurosawa, it will only be presented in theaters and will not be, quote, available digitally or on home media at any time. So if you're looking for Chime, which is a Kurosawa short, the best bet for you to go right now is to hit your local theater. Eric, however you want to start Serpent's Path and Chime, go for it.
I think Chime might already be available on physical media. Perhaps not this restoration, but I think it is available. And it's out there. I think we'll start with Serpent's Path since you saw some of that. This is basically a guy's daughter gets killed and he kidnaps someone that he thinks is responsible for it and chains him up in a basement, tortures him, and basically tries to get him to admit that he did it. And maybe he didn't, but then later on, someone else ends up getting caught, chained up in the basement, torturing them too. And you quickly get the sense that this guy whose daughter had been killed, he might not be the best person to find who killed her because he's just kind of like, it feels like he wants to punish someone rather than actually find the person who did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's real similar to Memories of Murder in that regard, where Memories of Murder, they're looking for a serial killer and they're not really equipped to do that because in the context of the movie, this is like the first first time they're dealing with a serial killer. So they don't really know how to do it. So they just take the first person that would admit to it. Serpent's Path kind of does the same thing where it's like, oh, you must have did it. You must have did it because you had to do it because we already have you chained up here. And now I need to believe that you're the one that did it. And then so it goes there. The ending gets pretty good, but yeah, I don't know what I should say after that. But yeah, it's a good crime thriller. It's a good morality tale. And it just illustrates why revenge and vengeance, the stuff that Batman would do, probably not the best way to go about finding justice.
Right, and these two people who are trying to find justice, one of them is the ex-Yakuza whose daughter, 8-year-old daughter was murdered, and the other person who's helping him, like Eric was saying, he is this calm professional who is a math teacher. His day job is he's a math teacher, and you can see him, at least for the minutes that I saw Serpent's Path, he's working out equations on the whiteboard while his students are in rapt attention trying to figure out the equations as well. So maybe his analysis plays a part in this whole revenge equation.
I will say the equations come back at the very end, and I think it probably means more than I caught on to. So maybe when you watch the rest of it, you'll pick up what they were laying down. I don't think I did, but yeah, the equations you mentioned do play a part later on in the movie.
Cool.
Next up, we have Chime.
What's your rating on Serpent's Path?
Oh, Serpent's Path, we'll probably go 4.5 on this one.
Cool.
Chime, what do I say about Chime? So it's in this classroom, and they're like, the teacher's teaching, like, it's like a culinary class. We're teaching how to cook. And one kid's kind of like sort of not all there mentally, and he keeps complaining about hearing this noise. And then the teacher would come by and it's like, all right, just rough chop some onions. And then he's like finally chopping them. The teacher's like, no, you don't do it that way. And it's like, do you hear that? And it's like, no, I don't hear anything. What does it sound like? A dog or something? It's like, no, it's like a chime or something. I hear him talking to me. It's like, well, I don't hear it, but either way, you're cutting the onions too small. It's going to release too much water. Then the teacher goes off, and then he's still chopping onions. He puts them in the pan, and now the onions are burning. The teacher comes by, and he's like, oh, yeah, you overcooked these a bit, but that's fine. And here's what you do to fix it. And he's like, you don't hear that noise? And the kid's like constantly getting more and more disruptive, to the point where he says that someone had taken half of his brain and replaced it with a machine. And the teacher's looking at him like, what? He's like, no, here, I'll show you. He takes a knife and digs it in his head, and he dies. And all the teacher freaks out. All the kids in the class freak out. And then from there, the teacher starts getting these weird starts acting strangely similar to the kid. At one point, he goes up to one of his students while they're in the classroom alone. And he just goes up to her and just stabs her in the back, and she turns around and just keeps stabbing her and kills her. I think snaps out of it. And it's like, oh crap, I gotta get rid of this body. And so it's got a bunch of that. And then like later on, the chime goes to someone else. Like they try to kill someone, but someone's there to stop them. And then the movie ends, and it ends a little too esoterically to where I don't know what this movie's really about. It's something about like someone hears a noise and it seems to pass on to other people somehow, but the movie just stopped, and the ending left me wanting quite a bit more, because like you have this mystery all the way through, and then it just kind of stops, and then I'm like, okay, what did I watch? What was all this about? I would say everything up until then, like the mystery of it and like the horror of it, was pretty cool.
Why do you think it just stopped? Do you think it was just a failure of the storytelling?
So it does this thing where like the guy is like sitting there hearing something. He hears a noise at the door and he answers the door. I think the idea is like the chime's still out there, but they don't even really fully explain what it is or what brought it on, or all it is that someone hears a noise and then they start acting erratically and then try to kill people. And then it comes and goes. Like, well, in fact, in the movie, because there's always like this train going by. So like with the kid that was the first kid that ended up killing himself, he's sitting there like chopping his onions, and you see like light going past him, like the reflection of the windows of a train going by. Mm-hmm. And so whenever something's about to happen, you'll see that those lights will fly by. And so there's something to do with that. And that was a cool touch. But I think just as a story, it just feels incomplete, because where it ends isn't satisfying at all.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think I get it. Maybe someone else would, but I didn't.
Okay. Well,
so it started off as like a 5-star, and then that ending just dumped it down to a 3-star. So there we are.
Okay.
But 45 minutes, check it out. and maybe you'll pick up what the movie was putting out because I did not.
So just remember, this is Serpent's Path. It's a full-length feature. It's from 1998. Again, it was remade in 2024 by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, but this version, the 1998 version, along with the 45-minute short Chime, they're playing together at your local theater, hopefully in the coming weeks. For now, for this week, it'll be playing in LA. I'll put a link for where you guys can check out these two Kiyoshi Kurosawa films. Yes, Eric.
It is weird that Chime's short because it's 45 minutes long. They should just call it a long.
Very good. So that's it for this week of CinemAddicts. We have 2 new movies, and then we have, these aren't new movies, but these are very cool Sawa projects. By the way, Bruce has his own review of Serpent's Path. Check it out. Well, the good thing is Eric gave it 4.5 stars. I haven't listened to Bruce's review yet. I don't even know what he gave Serpent's Path. I think, like Eric, he's a Kurosawa fan, so I'm assuming he will really enjoy Serpent's Path as well. Also, check out Bruce's review of Sirāt, available, by the way, now on Hulu and My Undesirable Friends. For next week, CinemAddicts episode 340, we have films. I believe we have screeners for all of them. There's a movie called Mabel. There's a film called Ballistic. I think, Eric, you got it. I requested for me and you because that's an action movie with Lena Headey from Game of Thrones. And then there's a movie called Waste Man, which I put in requests for, and also another movie called Marama. I don't know what Marama is about, but Bruce Purkey was excited to pick it for next week, and he'll definitely be reviewing that movie for next week again. So that's Marama, Waste Man, and Mabel, and Ballistic. Our Patreon for this month is the year 1980. I'll be posting up some sort of, please give us some picks for this month for 1980. I'll put on our CinemAddicts Facebook group for some pleas for our movie picks for this month. Eric, you want to say anything before we're out of here?
Yeah, if you said that Chime and Serpent's Path are playing together.
They're playing together, yeah.
Yeah, check it out because even though Chime, like the ending was not great, the rest of the movie's really good, and Serpent's Path is pretty good all the way through. So if those are playing in your area, give them a shot. You might be able to find them on physical media since they're older movies. Seek them out. They probably won't be the restored version that they're playing now, but there you go.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That is sweet. That is it for me and Eric for CinemAddicts this week for episode 339. I believe it's 339. Is it 339? I'm so out of it today because, hold on, let me see. It's episode 339. 339, and then episode 340 is next week with, the big three. I can't believe
340 is 4 shows from now. I think that's how it works.
Exactly. The math isn't mathing. Well, I think the smartest math person is a person who is on that Kurosawa film. Wow, Serpent's Path, but we'll see. I think you'll see whether or not he's a good person or not by the end of that movie. I can't wait to finish Serpent's Path. Again, Bruce has his own take of that movie as well. Is there anything else we should say, Eric, as far as supporting CinemAddicts YouTube channel? We're at 907 or 908. We're trying to get to 1,000. Please, if you can, please subscribe to us over at our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. We have mainly Eric's interviews. We also have the video versions of our movie reviews, and then we're going to be doing a lot more spoilers as well. Or we've been doing a lot more spoilers as well, just not the last couple of weeks. But I think moving forward, we'll have a lot more spoilers in the offing. What about you, Eric? What say you?
Yes,
that is it. And here is Bruce Purkey over at the CinemAddicts.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cinem-Attic, the attic of cinema, where once a week I do climb down. Why do I say climb down? Is there not just like a normal staircase? There is not. It's a ladder. It's one of those silly ceiling hatches that you pull down and then a ladder like folds down from that. And that's how I get down from the attic, in which I am kept every week by Greg and Eric and made to watch movies, sometimes 6.5 hour long movies. That's right. One of the movies I have this week is not really a movie, but it's supposed to be a movie. I guess it's 6 hours long. That is a movie called My Undesirable Friend, Part 1, Last Air in Moscow. On top of that movie, I will be discussing a, what would you call it? I guess it's a restoration, a reintroduction of not the Kurosawa you think, a Kurosawa movie from 1998 called Serpent's Path, and I also will be discussing Sirāt, as I have finally caught up with it since it went to streaming. That brings up a subject. Bruce, why don't you bring more big movies that come to the theaters? I don't really have the ability these days to go to the theater very much. Mostly because of my wife we've mentioned it before, she has MS, she's quite disabled. And if I'm away for long periods of time and she has a dire need, it is really tough for me to be there for her if I'm stuck in a movie theater somewhere, not getting her messages. So for me, and just for life in general, it's easier if I wait for things to be available in a streaming platform or a screener, which of course we get every week. So that's why I am not going to the theaters very much at all in the last 6 months. I think what was the last movie I saw in the theater? I can't even remember. Saw something with my kids. Anyway, I might see a few this year, but otherwise I would probably be seeing a movie every week or so for sure. Okay, that being said, let's get to the movies. First up, I have My Undesirable Friend, Part 1, Last Air in Moscow, directed by Julia Loktev. And this is, I believe, on MUBI or about to drop on MUBI. MUBI's doing a great job these days. I have Criterion Channel, but sometimes I think MUBI is the channel I should have because I feel like MUBI is like the more daring cousin of Criterion. They still get a lot of art house, weird and interesting movies, but they don't quite feel the need to be, I guess I won't say that Criterion movies are safe per se, but I think they're a little more respectable per se. And MUBI kind of can just go any direction they want to go, which I do appreciate. And they produce some great stuff. In fact, I think The Substance is a MUBI-produced film, and MUBI has a lot of great stuff on the channel. So that's just my unpaid plug for MUBI, which I do not have the service. So if we get a screener now and then from a MUBI film or something that MUBI is carrying, I appreciate that. And it's because they have a lot of good content. Okay, that being said, My Undesirable Friend, I'm going to call it that for now, is a documentary. I think it's best viewed as a documentary miniseries in 5 episodes. Now, it isn't in 5 episodes. I guess it's shown in a few theaters in its full length, which I said, once again, is about, I want to say it's about 5.5 hours long total. Like I said, 5 chapters. So if you think of it as like 5 one-hour episodes approximately, I think that's a better way to consider what My Undesirable Friend is. It takes place mostly from the fall of 21 through the winter, early spring of 2022. And it's almost fully following a group of about 7 or 8 women, mostly. There's a few men there, but mostly women, young women mostly as well. I think there's one main woman we're watching, which is probably middle-aged. Everyone else is probably in their 20s. And they all work or are associated with this last independent news source in Moscow at the time that some of the crackdown is occurring and pre and post beginning of Ukraine war. And the channel's called TV Rain. And at the time, I think they'd been going on for years, 15 years, 20 years, I forget how long, quite a while. But a lot of these women had seen TV Rain when they were kids, and they got interested in journalism, and their dream was to become part of TV Rain because TV Rain was seen as this non-state sponsored source of news and source of alternative news to the basically propaganda being pushed out on almost every other channel. There had been other sources, but most of them had all died or been pushed out of business by the time this documentary starts, and they get into that as well. Now, Bruce, why is this so long? Well, this is the plus and minus of the show. If you want your documentaries to get to the point, to be really quick, have direct information, and really just deal with the facts, just the facts of thing, then this documentary is not for you. Now, if you want something where it's much more exhaustive and much more willing to just sit with the different people that we meet and really get to know their lives and what makes them tick along with the issues at hand, then this documentary will work for you. If you're like me and when you were like a teenager, you purposely sought out and watched the entire documentary Showa, which I think was about, 10 or 12 hours long, then you're probably the kind of person that could dive into this documentary and enjoy it. And I am one of those people, as I just said, so I did really enjoy this documentary. I think if you can give yourself the time and really get into the lives of these different people, obviously you start to understand their personal stakes and their personal motivations and where each of these different women come from, so that the issues around them that are affecting them and that are affecting Russia in general will have a bigger impact for you. Now, what is the basic situation here? When we start the first chapter, I'm going to list the chapter names for you just so you know what the idea. The first chapter is The Lives of Foreign Agents. What does that mean? Foreign agents. It's a big key to this. The second chapter is The Town Crazies. The third chapter is The Holiday Special. The fourth chapter is The Expected Impossible. And the fifth chapter is Don't Say War. Now, if you want to think of it how it's basically divided up, so the first three chapters are leading up to the new year in 2021. And the last two chapters are basically from the beginning to several days after the start of the Ukraine war. So you get to see the worry and the buildup and the crackdown on independent media happening, and then you see what happens when things really all go to hell. And one of the biggest things that's happening in the very, very early parts of this documentary is Russia is doing this thing where they will designate people as foreign agents. Now, what does that mean, a foreign agent? Well, it sounds like you're selling secrets to the other countries. Well, what they do is they basically, if there's some person, in this case, a lot of times it's these independent news reporters or journalists or podcasters, if the Russian government deems them to be giving information they don't want to getting out, they will basically say, you know what, you're obviously a foreign agent. And it could be something as flimsy as one of these people shares a story on Facebook to a friend of theirs, or posts it in a way that international people could see the story, or reposts a news report from outside of Russia. Anything that they can basically say as an excuse of like, you're obviously disseminating or getting propaganda from outside of Russia, and therefore you're a foreign agent. And once they are basically branded as a foreign agent, anytime they post or do a video or do a written report, post a photograph, they can post a photograph of their dog, and whatever they do to the public, they have to post this big disclaimer. And it almost looks like the disclaimer we used to get at the beginning of VHS tapes. Do not duplicate this tape for the penalty of the FBI, so on and so forth. Same sort of thing. It's like, this person is a foreign agent, blah, 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 blah. And they essentially have to put that disclaimer on anything that they put out there. And if they don't, it's a beginning excuse of the Russian government getting an ability to basically tell this person that they've broken the law, they defied the law, and therefore that could cause their arrest, it could cause fines, it could cause all kinds of things. And of course, not surprisingly, a lot of these people have at one point been detained, some have been imprisoned. One of the women we follow, one of the reporters at TV Rain, her husband has been in prison He's been in prison for like over a year when we're watching this. Of course, she's freaked out. She's trying to get in contact with him. She can't hear from him. She sends things to him that may or may not ever get to him. And he literally hasn't been charged with anything yet. They have, I guess the law in Russia is they have up to a year and a half to hold you in prison before they even charge you. So of course, she's just waiting for him to be charged. And then everything she does in the whole events of this documentary, she's concerned that if she does something, it might potentially make his sentence longer. And just the fact that she's out there trying to do what she thinks is right, but also worried that it may basically keep her husband in jail longer, it's just a simple little thing for the outsider to view, but that's like a huge impact on her life. And each of the women we follow, there's versions of that story in different forms. We see how a protest, or not even a protest, like a vigil for the assassination of a political figure, just appearing to that can get you in jail. Or not. There's just all the things they have to think about when they're trying to do these reports, and just watching their day-to-day life. One of the things that really struck me was, and once again, a lot of the scenes are just them hanging out, having a dinner party, drinking with friends and talking. And the whole time, the documentarian, who's from outside of Russia, who just keeps coming back, meeting up with these people and following them, is just watching them do this stuff. They may be cooking, just talking as friends, sitting in a bar, but there's always, throughout this, there's always this air of impending possibility that at any point they could be arrested, they could be charged with something, some kind of fabricated charge against them could be produced. And they also talk about, various of the people in here at some point or another have had their homes invaded by troops or by police and ransacked and or arrested or their items seized, this kind of thing. So you get this feeling of it's if you are worrying about at any moment in your house might be hit by a flood. At any moment, you have to have your escape plan ready. Well, it's the same sort of thing. Wherever they're at, they always have their escape plan ready. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to get our devices if the police come in now? When are the police most likely to come in now? What are they going to look for? How can you hide something if they're going to come in? And when you're saying hiding something, the contraband they're hiding is just factual news reporting. And that's the thing. And once again, that's what happens in an authoritarian regime. Now, I think it's a pretty fascinating and slowly building tension of this movie throughout, because you, like I said, you kind of get to know each of their stories and what's facing them, so that by the time you get to the 4th and 5th chapter and the Ukrainian war is popped off, you really know the stakes for these people, and you know that everything could be coming to an end for them, both in their freedom and in their career, and you're not sure exactly how it's going to play out, and it becomes like a slow speed political thriller in some ways. I think it's a fascinating documentary. Once again, it is not for everyone. It will be way too slow moving and way too full of things that you don't feel like you have to have in a documentary. For a lot of people, it'll be that. But if you want that real full view of the kind of lives of an independent reporter in that particular era of Russia, it's very fascinating and pretty tense by the last third, I would say. Also, it is a fantastic and worrying view into next level authoritarianism and how it creeps up and how it uses quote unquote laws, or the redefinition of laws, the redefinition of what is legal to be free speech, and how those things are slowly eroded away, and how most of the world around the people that actually are in the middle of that fight, most of the people around that are oblivious or don't care or just not interested or apolitical. And seeing that, and then looking at our current situation in America, you can definitely see like, oh, we are in, if the Russia that we see in this movie from a few years ago was in level 5 out of 6, we are in level maybe 2 or 3 out of 6. So beware. And I think it's really interesting to see that. I mean, sure, they have a bigger history with the KGB and with communism and Stalinism and all that. They have more of a structure in place to allow that sort of crackdown, but we're getting there. So it's pretty darn fascinating. I was going to go 4 stars, but for me, I think personally it's 4.5 stars. I think this is 4.5 stars. I think for the average person, this might be tough, but for some people, this is going to be like it is for me, and it's going to be a really effective documentary series. It is officially, I think I would consider a full movie, but I would say it's best thought of as a series, and you can get it and consume it easier, I think, in those bite-sized pieces. Take a chapter at a time, watch a chapter a day, and I think that's a way to go through this. Also, you noticed it was called Part 1. It does mention at the very end of this, at the end of each chapter, too, it'll give you quick updates on where each of those people are, just like a TV series or a movie would do. So all the way through, you're getting updates. This is Part 1, and it does mention at the very end of this that Part 2 is coming. And Part 2 is called My Undesirable Friend. Part 2, I think it's called The Exiles. And the term The Exiles will definitely make sense by the end of Part 1. So, good stuff. Check it out. Really interesting, very maddening, and worrying if you are at all paying attention to the modern world in America and in general, but in America specifically. Okay, next up, we've got a 1988 movie from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Now, it must be tough. This is called A Serpent's Path. It must be tough being named Kurosawa and being a really good filmmaker and having like we got our dog coming in here, the Seven Samurai and all that kind of stuff existing, and Rashomon, and the most famous filmmaker of all time is Kurosawa. But you are another Kurosawa, and you're from Japan, and people don't necessarily know your name as much. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is, though, pretty well known, especially in the horror and the Japanese horror community, because he did make Pulse, which is very famous and beloved from the early days of J-horror. And he also made a movie I love from a similar era than 97, 96, I forget what year exactly, called Cure. And that is a fantastic movie as well. Recently, I reviewed one of his most recent movies called, I think, Clouds. It's on a Criterion, and it is quite good as well. He made a short film, they sent us 2 films this week. I did not watch the short film, but I have seen it before. I saw it a couple years ago. It's a fairly recent film called Chime. And when I say short film, it's about 40 some odd minutes. And I'm not going to review it again here, but it is quite good. A little frustrating because it feels like the first act of a full movie and it leaves you hanging, but it is a short film, so you can only get so much. But it is definitely, I would say, in tone and in kind of mood, and it's somewhat in format. It's a sister film to Cure in that it involves maybe supernatural or kind of unusual events and some sort of spread or a curse that can go from person to person. And I'm not going to really describe exactly what that is, but it's pretty cool. I definitely liked Chime, and hopefully Greg or Eric watched it and give you a full review on this episode. You've already heard that. I quite liked it, even though it's enigmatic and frustrating towards the end. To me, it was a really interesting beginning to what should be a full movie, I would think, at some point. Now, one more interesting thing about Serpent's Path. Once again, Serpent's Path is from 1998. It's one of his earlier films and not lauded as much as the other ones I mentioned. I hadn't heard of it. Once again, I'm not a completist when it comes to this Kurosawa at all. But apparently, he has remade this film in the last couple of years. I know he made like 3 or 4 films in just the last 2 years. Chime was one of them. Clouds was one of them. I guess Serpent's Path was the other. So he's remade this movie just recently, in the last couple of years. I'm very curious to see it. I have not seen it. And I'm wondering how it would change or update with a almost 20-year span between the two. That would be interesting for me to see that for sure. So, what is Serpent's Path? Really basic, simple concept that I can describe to you, and then it gets complicated a little bit, for sure. First of all, it has his style, which is this he has this very cold, washed out look to his movies. He doesn't get overly stylistic with most of his movies that I've seen. They seem to be very grounded looking, but they always have a somewhat enigmatic, somewhat hard to grasp, full story. Like, you'll get the basic story, but there's always things around the edges that don't quite add up and you have to try to decode and figure out. And this movie is no exception to that. So what is Serpent's Path? You start out with 2 guys. You've got Najima and Miyashita. And I'm going to describe Miyashita, I believe, as the father, and Najima is a teacher. They're 2 men about the same age, middle-aged dudes, like 30s. They're in a car. And from now on, I'm just going to call one the father and one the friend. Or one the father and one the teacher. I'll do that. They are friends, apparently. But it's easier, I think, that way than me just saying the names over and over again. And right at the beginning, they're sitting in a car, and you get the idea they're waiting, and you find out, they're gonna kidnap somebody. And you get the feeling that the father is out for revenge. They pretend to be delivery drivers. They find their way into the person's house. They tase the person, and within a few minutes, you see the person chained up in an empty factory somewhere, like a rundown, beat-up factory. Almost looks like the room from Reservoir Dogs or something. It gets that feel for you right out of the gate. The father pushes up a TV, puts in a VHS tape, plays a grainy video of a young child playing, and then he proceeds to read the police report about the murder of his own daughter, which you assume is the girl that you see playing, just like smiling and stuff on the screen. And he basically goes into the clinical detail of the police report, of all of her injuries, and how she was assaulted and murdered. And the father says, now we've got you here, and I'm going to get my revenge because you murdered my daughter. And then you've got the setup, right? There it is, revenge. They've got the father, or they've got the killer. The father's there. So for some reason, this teacher, who's a friend of his, is involved in this revenge plot too. And you're, wow, that's a pretty good or bad friend, depending on how you look at it. Like, the person would just go on this kidnapping / assuming to be murder, like a plot to get revenge for the murder of this other guy's daughter. That's a pretty loyal friend. But either way, you're not quite sure of his motivation, the teacher, that is. That's your setup. But very quickly, there's a wrinkle thrown into that. And that is we'll call him the murderer, the murderer chained to the wall, who's getting like no food. He's getting the food thrown on the ground. He's getting hosed down after he messes himself because he's not allowed to use the bathroom, all this kind of stuff. He's not having a good time. He's just waiting to be tortured and murdered, killed. And he, out of desperation, you're assuming, says, no, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy. I could tell you who the guy is. The guy is this other guy. He was the head of the mob, whatever, and they were trying to get revenge on you. And this is the first wrinkle. You find out the father has some connection to Yakuza or mob or underworld people, that they had something out for him, possibly a hit, and that maybe the murder of his daughter was retribution against him. And this guy they've got chained to the wall says, it's one of the boss dudes in that group that you want to get. And I can tell you how to get him. He likes to go golfing. He's a terrible shot when he goes golfing. Go get him and bring him back here. He's the guy. And thus the complications begin on their seemingly relatively simple revenge plot, because now they're out to go get another guy and they're not sure which guy is the guy, and even if either of those two guys is the guy. And that's where you go with this movie. So I loved how quickly and how straightforward this movie just gets right into it and right into the complications of this kind of plot. And it isn't, I wouldn't say it's quite Coen Brothers-esque, but it's on the edge of that. There are some moments that are somewhat comedic, especially around how these two guys, which seem to be relative amateurs, how they deal with various members of this kind of, I guess, Yakuza gang, and how are they going to like subdue and get people into their lair when they're not really trained for that sort of thing. And how you have this kind of combination between these two. Once again, very kind of Fargo-esque in some degree, not as overtly comedic, but there's elements where the teacher's very analytical and the father is almost gleefully ready to just inflict pain, damage, and murder upon these people who have hurt his daughter. Understandably, but also a little bit too gleeful almost. He's very hot-headed. So you got these two kind of, not good cop, bad cop, you kind of got calm cop, calm non-cop, crazy, ready to murder non-cop. And that's kind of your setup. Now, that I'm going to say 4.5 stars. For me, this is 4.5 stars. This is a really solid crime revenge, I wouldn't say thriller per se, but definitely crime revenge movie. Really gritty, not really high budget, but very to the point and always engaging and always interesting to me. Now, some people might be dissatisfied by how it plays out, but I like how this continually upends your expectations, because whereas most movies like this are going to really be about what's the cost of revenge, and is revenge really satisfying, and does it really solve the hurt and the emptiness that you have that caused you to go that route. A lot of movies go that way, right? I think this movie is much more about, do you know who's guilty? Can you really figure out who's guilty and who is really guilty in this world? Because as it goes on, the actual known guilt of any of these people, including the two main characters, becomes highly in question. And I would think that would be frustrating for some viewers that want this to be a cut and dried revenge thriller. I think that might be something that would cut it down some levels to them. For me, it makes it a little more interesting to me, because it allows me to keep thinking about it and to keep wondering and to keep analyzing what's going on and figuring out like what is really secretly going on here. So 4.5 stars for Serpent's Tale, or Serpent's Path, sorry. Let's get the name right. Serpent's Path. Now, I'm going to do quick spoilers here, because I think it is interesting to think about what is actually going on here and the ending of this movie and how it plays out. So I'm going to get into a couple of things really quick here, and I would hope maybe Greg and Eric will have time to talk about it too, because I would like to hear their take on the ending of this, because I think there is some, it is not really clear and it could be read a couple different ways. So first of all, I'm going to really quickly, you got the two people now trapped in there. They're both saying they didn't do it. They keep getting people, and the people keep saying they didn't do it, but you're never sure if these people are just saying that to save themselves and they really are involved, or if they did do the murder. And it keeps kind of going down that line to the point that one of the captors, they basically have one of the captors kill the other captor so they can narrow it down to one. And they take that one out to a place where they're supposed to find the other guy who really did it, supposedly. And of course, that ends up being not real. And eventually becomes this kind of extended shootout, almost comedically. this extended shootout with the whole rest of that Yakuza gang in this other factory. But here's where some twists come in. And first of all, Cloud does some very interesting versions of that same thing. So this movie I saw just recently, he does another big extended shootout with a bunch of people in a factory that's also played out in a way that's unusual. So that seems to be a thing he likes to play with too. It's this stereotypical crime thriller ending where everyone goes to a shootout in a factory or a warehouse or something. Anyway, our two main guys, they have a big shootout at the factory, and all of the Yakuza end up dead. All of them. And throughout the movie, we've been seeing short little flashbacks and sides where we get things like we see the teacher in his classroom, and he has this very smart, very young woman in his class. Like all the people, he's like a theoretical mathematician or something. And he's got like a whole class of like adults or young adult, late teens, 20s, older people. And he's got this one girl in there, it's like, I don't know, 8 or 9. Very similar to the age of the dead girl. And we keep seeing shots of him teaching this class, and she's like the most intelligent person in the class. And we get to this shot where the father shows up after the class one time, meets with him, sees the girl, makes a weird comment to her, like she's really a good girl or something like that. And then after they part, the father follows the girl and stares down a hall, like an alleyway at her with this really creepy smile. And you're starting to think like, are they trying to indicate that the father might have killed his own daughter? Like this interaction he's having with this girl currently is indicating that maybe he did it? And you're not sure, and that's one of the first enigmatic things. Well, then we get to this big shootout at the end, and as the shootout's beginning, it's revealed by the teacher that they're in the warehouse where they filmed the murder of the daughter. And that had never been revealed before. We didn't know it had been filmed, which is, of course, horrifying. You see, like, chairs and a table and like tools and stuff. So you imagine she was horribly tortured, and it was all filmed for some sick videotape production that could be shared on now it would be like the dark web, right? But then it would have been just underground, I guess, mailing to people. I don't know how they would do it. Kind of like a 8mm, I think was that movie that had Nick Cage, kind of similar idea. So that's revealed before this big shootout. Everyone ends up dead. And the last moment of that shootout is the teacher approaching our father that we've been following the whole time and hitting him over the head and knocking him out. And the final scene is the father chained in that same factory for the whole movie. And basically the teacher says, now this is your last meal. And it was also revealed somewhere in that last section that the teacher was involved in this because something similar had happened to someone in his life. He didn't really get specific, maybe his own daughter, but he also was out for revenge. So that's why he was so invested. He was not just doing it out of friendship. He was in the same boat as the father. The teacher and the father were in the same boat. One difference. The father was in cahoots with this whole gang. So obviously he knew that they were killing girls, filming it, sending it out to people. Basically, the whole point all the way along somewhat had been made off to the side that if you're involved with this gang at all, you're guilty. And that's the whole idea of what is guilty. And at this point, the father, chained to the wall, is saying, like, I never knew I was just like the person who shipped things out. I never even knew what I was shipping. I never saw them. I didn't know what I was doing. So he's like the Nazi who worked at the entrance to the camp. And he didn't know anything about what was going in the camp, supposedly, or the people that lived next door to the camp. We didn't know what was going on in there. He's trying to claim that he has no guilt because he didn't know. But the teacher doesn't buy that. And we're not ever told for sure, but the implication is this guy probably knew. This guy, the way we've seen him act, he's probably very guilty. He's probably not guilty of doing anything to his own daughter. We don't know for sure, but probably not. But he's equally guilty if he knew the stuff was going on to other girls. And you saw the way he looked at that girl in the alleyway, and you feel like he's got something really bad going on there. So the final moments are, our teacher rolls up the TV, and he says, I've seen the tape of your daughter, and now you're going to see it too. And he puts in the tape. We never see the tape, but he puts in the tape and walks away. And the implication is that the best revenge he could get is forcing the father to see what he's been complicit with, like what evil he has helped reign upon the world and what he is part of. I think it's a pretty effective and pretty haunting finale to the movie, and I think it really works well. Really be interested in hearing the take by Greg and or Eric of this movie. I think they'd both really like it, but I'm not sure if they're going to get to it. Okay, that's 4.5 stars for Serpent's Path from 1998. Last but not least, I finally caught up with Sirāt. Was nominated for Best International Picture, lost to a movie I have not seen yet. What was the movie? I forget the name of it. By the guy that did Worst Person in the World? Yes, which I'm interested in seeing that movie. I just haven't got to it yet. The new movie, not Worst Person in the World. I've seen that. Sirāt, though, I think was William Lindis. Hey, William Lindis. Thinking about you. I know you're struggling these days. I think it was William Lindis' favorite movie of the year, and I could see this being people's favorite movie of the year. I really like this movie, and as I've sat with it for the last 4 or 5 days, I just keep thinking about it, and it's definitely one of those kind of movies. It won't work for everybody because it is obscure enough and non-plot heavy enough that it just won't work for some people. But if it sinks its teeth into you, I think it's going to just sit and stew, and you're going to just keep going over it, and it's going to really worm its way into your brain. I really like this movie. It's definitely, right out of the gate, it's a 5-star movie. Rot, directed by Oliver Lax. I don't know how to say his name exactly. The main actors, there are hardly any actors here you would know. The main actor played Luis, is Sergi Lopez. He was the sick guy, the evil dude in Pan's Labyrinth. His son is played by Bruno Nunez Arjón. Esteban is the son, Luis and Esteban. Everybody else in here, I just have first names because they're all played and named the people they are. So essentially, the movie starts in rave culture in Morocco. A really cool opening scene too. That's the kind you know in the good hands here, when you have this kind of evocative opening scene where you're just seeing big giant PA speakers stacked up, dusty, in the desert, and then you get this longer shot of just this wall of speakers with a backdrop of this kind of red, dusty cliff, and then the rave music slowly like pulses in, and then you just see the seething crowd of just motley people, and in that crowd are real non-actors that become some of the main characters of this movie, and you meet them and are introduced to their acting names, or they're just real names, I guess in this case, they just used them, and they are introduced from that crowd. Basic concept is Luis, the father, and the son Esteban are looking for Luis's daughter and Esteban's sister. So we're looking for this woman who's been missing for about 5 months, but it isn't like she's missing like she got abducted or anything. And that's your first thought, right? She didn't get abducted or anything. She just went off. She's a younger woman, probably in her 20s, went off to explore the world. The kind of same thing would happen stereotypically. You'd go off and backpack across Europe or whatever. But if your daughter just went and backpacked across Europe and just never contacted you after 4 or 5 months, you might start to get concerned about her. And it's never explicitly explained exactly what the daughter's name, Mar, what Mar did or why they're concerned about her. But they're concerned enough about her that Esteban and Luis have come to Morocco and are searching for her. They knew she was involved in this rave scene, a traveling rave scene. They'll have a rave in one place, and then everyone will say, hey, there's going to be a rave 100 miles to the west or whatever in this spot. Let's go there in 2 days or whatever, that kind of a thing. So in the beginning of this movie, those two are going through the crowd, just showing pictures, missing person kind of pictures and little flyers, and just trying to get anyone to say, have you seen this person? None of them have seen her. No one has seen Mar. And they finally come up with a kind of this group on the side with the people that we're going to end up following most of the time. Just a group of ravers, just random. Jade, Bigui, Jeff, Steph, and Tonin. For me, the ones that really stuck out were Jade and Bigui, but they're all interesting. Some of them are missing. One of them is missing a hand. Another one's missing a leg. They are all like haggard. These are the kind of people that look like if in some world they would be living on the street, but here they've somehow found a way to live in this world of traveling vagabond raves. And when Luis and Esteban meet these people, they're trying to say if they've seen her, and they don't even say they've seen her. They're just like, no, but there's going to be this rave hundreds of miles away, blah, blah, blah. You might want to check there. Maybe she's going to go to that. That's about all they know. And before anything really more happens, The government troops kind of roll in and break up what's left of the rave the next morning, not because it's outlawed, but because essentially in the background you feel like World War III or something is starting to happen. There's this kind of overarching presence of military unrest in the world around them. You're not really seeing it, but you're just seeing it like at the edges. It's not like a huge threat to the people in this movie that we're watching, but it's there. So as everyone's rolling away from the first rave, these two big, one like a big motorhome, like a big transport truck, which carry all of those people I mentioned, Bigui and Jade and all them. These two big trucks roll away into the desert, and our main characters, Luis and Esteban, decide in a split moment to go follow them. Luis and Esteban have like a little minivan. Immediately they're stopped by the Motley Crew. I'm going to just call them Motley Crew, all the people I mentioned. And the Motley Crew talks to Luis and Esteban and they say, you don't have a vehicle that can handle this. This little van of yours is not going to make it. We're going across rugged landscape and this is not going to hack it. And Luis is just like, we have no choice. We have to do this. We have to find her and we're going to try. So you don't have to help us or anything. We'll just follow you to the best of our ability and we'll make it there. And off they go across the landscape. And the thing you can't describe about this movie, and I'm not going to say the rest of the movie is what it is. It's a journey, of course, as you might imagine. And it's both mesmerizing. Some people might say boring. I don't think at all. It's mesmerizing. In some ways, it feels like, to me, like Apocalypse Now, where you're on this journey that just gets more and more dangerous and surreal and dreamlike and beautiful and tense as it goes. It's also got elements of Wages of Fear, and I won't describe why exactly other than there is at points a threat of extreme violence, random threats of extreme violence. Wages of Fear came to mind, and to some degree it has a little bit of Mad Max in there, Fury Road or any Mad Max movie, and that is because when you watch them going across this landscape, and there's these two big truck motorhome with these rugged, grizzled people, missing limbs, driving them, that almost seems like if you would have picked a couple of the vehicles from Mad Max and just gone along with them and made them your buddies, but they weren't marauding mercenaries, they were actually pretty cool alternative world weirdos, then that's what you get. Boy, this movie has some gut punches in it, though. You got to watch out. No one is safe, and you definitely will feel that from about the midpoint on. It'll give you it's about a 2-hour movie. It'll give you about an hour to really sink into the lives of all these different oddball characters and really get to love them. It becomes a found family with Luis and Esteban kind of being adopted and somewhat adopting this weirdo group. But you end up, on a lot of these non-actors and stuff, you end up really loving them all and getting to really know them. And we are in a way like Luis, like if you're from the traditional suburban established world, you might just look at these people and go like, oh, what a bunch of drugged out losers just escaping from life, not doing anything. But in the same way that Luis and Esteban are pulled in to get to know these people as actual human beings, we as you viewers do the same thing. We kind of get to sink in, see where they're at and see what they're thinking, and get to, like in any world, when you see someone who's an outsider, quote unquote, when you actually get to live with people and get to understand people as human beings, some of those expectations and those reservations and prejudices can hopefully fall away, unless you're just an idiot, which a lot of people are idiots. But if you're a person with a heart, you will get to appreciate a person on their human level. So the first half of this movie does that. The second half of the movie does something entirely different. Love this movie. It's 5 stars, easy. It's easily in my top favorite movies from 2025, and a movie I feel like I'll come back to. Everyone has talked about the soundtrack, this kind of electronic rave / moody, just really interesting, cool soundtrack with this, just like I said, the visuals are just striking as well. But what's underestimated is the level of tension that's built in this movie in some really interesting ways. And I'd have to get to spoilers to tell you that. I might do a little bit of spoilers here in a minute, but first I will just say 5 stars. Check it out. It's on Hulu now. It's really accessible for most people. If you like daring and interesting, non-plot heavy movies, much more mood pieces, but a really interesting mood piece, then this is something you should check out. If that's not for you, then you'll know from my description if it isn't. Okay, quickly, let's get into some spoilers for Sirāt. So the biggest thing about Sirāt is like, what is it about? Why is this stuff happening? There's no plot in a way, but then terrible things start happening to people. So first of all, I think there's a big thing here about, like I said, about outsiders, outsider society, and being judged. And I also think to some degree what's happening with Luis is Luis and Esteban have to learn to trust these other people, and they have to learn to trust Luis and Esteban. And that trust does come in by the midpoint of this movie. They are trusting each other and accepting of each other. You see things like Esteban gets his hair redone and braided and shaved and everything, so he starts to look like one of the motley group. And Luis starts to really trust them too. I also think there's something interesting here about these people are all damaged. In a sense, they're almost like veterans of war. Like they're people who have lost limbs. They're people who are beaten by the world. And they've tried to find a way to, like, as a group, to have meaning and to have a family with each other and love for each other and to be there for each other and to support each other. And Luis, in the beginning of this movie, is lost. He's searching for his daughter. And as you see in the movie, that storyline, that whole impetus for the entire journey is never solved. We never see him find her. We never even hear him find where she even was or what happened to her. So, in essence, what he really finds is that he basically becomes damaged and beaten and hurt by the world in the gut punch scene that everyone remembers, which is when Esteban and the little dog die in this movie halfway through. I said I was in spoilers, so if you're listening now, damn, you should have watched the movie. When that happens, he has also lost something. I mean, he hasn't lost a physical limb, but he's lost a limb. He's lost a part of his life. And at this point now, he's lost 2 children, maybe his only children. We don't even know. We don't know if there's a wife in this situation. All we know is that at this point, he is a broken man, and he fully becomes one of their group. He has to become fully one of their group at that point. Now, some people pointed out how this is like really manipulative by the filmmaker, but I think that's on purpose to some degree. I don't think this is like a realistic world. I don't think this is a world where there's pure chance. I mean, sure, in a real world, this kind of thing could happen, but it feels more like fate here. It feels more like things are happening to people in almost a mythical way in this movie. Are they symbolic? Sure. But also they are just, it's like, I mean, it's the world teaching you things that you have to learn. And is it cruel? It is, but it just works really well. One thing I'd like to say about the filmmaking, that point where the son dies, it's really good because throughout the whole movie, there's the little dog. And you're always worrying about little dogs in these kind of movies. Like, oh, this dog is here. The dog's going to obviously die. The dog's going to die. And there's a whole scene where they're all stuck on this knife edge cliff road trying to push one of these giant motorhome things out of a rut in the dirt. And while they're doing it, Esteban's playing with the dog near the edge. And you're like, oh my God, that's so dangerous. And you keep waiting for the dog just to jump for the toy he's playing with or whatever and just go flying off the edge. And you're like, oh my God, I hate that. And then Luis looks back and says, get in the car. It's dangerous to play there. Get back in the car. So he gets back in the car and he's just sitting there playing with the dog in the car. And you're like, great, the dad's being responsible. He's trying to make sure his kid stays safe. And of course, the kid accidentally hits the parking brake and just rolls away. And it's just like, it's like those moments where something gets out of your control and you can't stop it. And it just happens in slow motion, but it's not slow motion. And that's how it's played out. And that's probably how it would be in reality, where it just rolls backwards for like 10 seconds and off the edge. And you never see it. You just hear it. The car falls 1,000 feet and you know the kid's dead. You know the dog's dead. They don't let the father look. And a big part of this movie is you don't have control over your own life. You can only control what you do with what happens to you, how you go forward. It's all about how do you go forward? How do you move forward in this life and somehow find a reason to keep moving forward? And one of the other group members looks over the edge and they know that kid is gone. And in your mind, you're like, why aren't they going back? Why aren't they getting the body and all these kind of things? And it's like, that's not the point of this movie. And then there's the whole third act, which involves, I'm not going to get into it other than to say, like, I think I'm going to leave that for a surprise, because if someone's listening to this, they've already got one surprise they shouldn't have without watching the movie. And I don't want to give the other surprise. Let's just say there's some other cathartic moments. In fact, I think it's even called catharsis, involving a impromptu, just personal rave they put on in the middle of the desert with themselves because they need something. They're trying to give Luis something. They're trying to give everybody a reason to forget for a few moments all the pain and terribleness that they've been encountering. And let's just say it goes horribly awry and leaves them in a state of absolute adriftness in the world. And they are in absolute danger. And how will they continue to go forward in that situation? And I think that's the whole point of the movie by the end, is like, yeah, reality, in like the unreality of this movie, reality is a world where bad and terrible random things are going to happen to you no matter how much you try to not make them happen. And if they do, is there a reason to move forward, and how can you move forward and without just losing yourself? Is there a way to do that? And I think this movie is about finding a way to do that, and telling you there is a way to do that even amid the horrifying things that can be around you. I think that's how you could read this movie. I'd be curious to hear what Eric or Greg think of it. I think Eric watched this movie this week. I could see Eric hating this movie because it doesn't do anything. I could see him loving it because it does some very interesting things. It just could go either way for him. I don't know how he's going to take it, but I hope he likes it. Anyway, I've talked enough. I've talked a lot today. 3 great movies, though, to bring you. Once again, Sirāt, 5 stars. Serpent's Path from 98, 4.5 stars. And My Undesirable Friend Part 1, Last Air in Moscow, 4.5 stars. Thanks, everybody. I hope I have some good stuff for you next week. And bye, guys.